One of the things that my college always talked about was educating people in their minds and in their hearts. And I feel like with English, there's such a perfect place to do that, right? Where if you're really going to look, if literature is going to tell us more about what it means to be human, for us to really look at not only the skills that we're learning, but go into the faith aspects of it as well. One of the cool things that I loved about BCS is it offered the opportunity to do that. A lot of my other teaching experiences, you always stop short a little bit of that. You could talk about certain issues, but you couldn't have that full conversation where students were asking that and processing that. And the other thing is when I had my interview here, it was one of the best interview situations I've ever been in because it was a conversation. It went so fast because suddenly we were just talking about the things that mattered in education and the things that mattered about students. And I realized that the people here really had a heart for students and a heart for good education, and they really worked to support each other. And I was like, I really want to be a part of that.
Allison and I started the same year.
Yep.
I remember going through teacher training with you.
That's right.
Which was great, bonding experience.
Mm-hmm.
But BCS, to be honest, was not somewhere that I ever would have imagined myself. I grew up going to public school, went to a public university, went to job fair in college, and did not anticipating talking to anyone representing a private school, but ended up having a long conversation with Blake, and 45 minutes later was like, this is somewhere that I align with. Like, I believe in what is happening at this school, and I want to learn more. Then coming down and seeing Bellevue Christian and meeting people and seeing the environment that students were learning in, it was more than I ever imagined that a place of education could be. It was beyond just content knowledge. It was comprehensive in experience and relationship, and that was really powerful.
I came here mainly because Kristen and I had our girls, right? Looking ahead, we knew that we wanted Christian education for our kids. I always knew that there was something that was special about this place. I liked the people, and I liked the way that they were, and they always spoke very positively about Bellevue Christian. And then getting to know people when I interviewed, and it was like, this is the right place for our kids to work. And 15 years later, I wouldn't be any place different. It's the best.
I had some experience with Christian schools on the East Coast. When my family decided to move to the Pacific Northwest, we spent a summer just kind of scouting around, and I had been a school administrator, and so I was looking at all of the Christian schools from Seattle up through Linden. We made a stop at Bellevue Christian, and one of the folks that we met said to me, "Hey, you ought to go and have a conversation with Al Green." And I was like, who's that? And they said, well, he's one of the guys who founded the school. And so they gave me his phone number. I called him up, and he was so hospitable. And we sat down, and we had a conversation. And knowing what I was looking for in a Christian school and having that first conversation with Dr. Green clinched it for me. I thought, this is the kind of place that I want to work. And kind of at the heart of that is the fact that the world is one. It's not divided between secular categories and sacred categories, that this is God's world, and whatever we teach, no matter what we teach, it's all part of God's domain. And so that's why I'm here. And why I'm still here is that I get to have this conversation with a whole generation of people. How do we think about God's world? How do we live in God's world? How do we hone our faith?
That's good stuff. My answer to this question actually vibrates sympathetically with Allison and Bethany in a lot of ways. I'm a second career teacher. I started in aerospace for almost 20 years, and the whole time wished I was teaching. And at some point, my wife said, if this is a love that you still have after this much time, don't you think you should try it? And I said yes. I, like Bethany, did not consider teaching in a private school or a Christian school. And like Allison, I came, and the interview experience was completely different.
Yep.
It was very conversational. I spent the whole day here. I had lunch with the science department. and kind of fell in love with the people first, and fell in love with the passion that Bellevue Christian has to teach thinking skills, not to teach the right answers. So I called Mr. Anderson later that day and said yes. What keeps me here is, as I mentioned before, Bellevue Christian's passion for not necessarily claiming to have all the right answers, and certainly not trying to feed kids the black and white. But we dwell in the gray, and we're okay with that. As Dan said, God made it all. And in the science department, what a refreshing thing for a Christian school to say, God made it all. So there are no questions too scary. There are no forbidden questions. And furthermore, we don't necessarily have to have all the answers. We can roll around in the exploration of God's creation, and that's probably what He designed us to do. That's a pretty freeing place to be as a teacher.
My whole life, I had had my education and my faith separated, and I had no clue what it would look like to have those so fully united, and the freedom and the joy that that would bring of being able to talk and connect the two, which when you're passionate about two things, to have to separate them is really, really challenging. And so to have the freedom for them to grow and be intertwined is amazing.